When we are scared, we are totally wired to be isolated, to be more selfish. So if we change the wire from fear to love or hope, we can make people more compassionate. I say to my team every day that like science is saying to us that we still have time.
You're listening to A Climate Change. This is Matern, your host. Got a great guest on the show, Camilo. Kamila is an amazing person, has worked in Brazil. She is the founder and executive director of Creators Academy Brazil. She's a strategic advisor of Instituto Tanloa. I'm going to have to pass on some of these Portuguese words because I'm going to butcher them too badly. So I'm going to let you tell us about the names. But you've got an impressive resume. I've worked with all kinds of different NGOs down in Brazil and done work, amazing work. And tell us a little bit about that. I would love to know more. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me here, Matt. So some of the Portuguese words. Actually, Talanoa is from the Pacific Islands words, I think. It means like a big circle. So serving in a board of the Talanoa Institute and also the Igarapé Institute. Igarapé is a Portuguese word. It means it's small rivers that runs before the big river. So I started my journey a few years ago. Actually, I started working when I was 11. But my journey on climate starts 5 years ago when I went to my first COP. So I have been finding my way to reconnect with nature for almost 10 years. But 5 years ago, I had the chance to understand a little bit more of climate policy and the impact of decision making in my future, in the future of the people that I love. And I was just kind of scared how much has been talked and done or not done. And people like me wasn't involved. Regular people just don't know what decision makers are doing regarding their future. When I went to Glasgow for COP26, I was just questioning myself, why it took me so long to come here and understand that. Of course, there's a lot of economic barriers. It's not easy to understand UN systems. And back in the day, I wasn't an English speaker. So also a language barrier that complicates everything because climate conversations is it's almost all in English or other foreign languages that it's just 1% of Brazilians speak English, right? So it's really, really hard to access those conversations as well. But I was fortunate to had a lot of support in the climate community. And I was so impressed with everything that was being discussed, but the feeling that I'm not part of this. So how can I come back home and make something? And then Creators Academy just started. I used to say that the creators economy is the last mile of education. And nowadays, sometimes for Gen Alpha and Gen Beta will be actually the first step of education. They've been learning everything with TikTok and other social media platforms before even from their parents, right? You see kids 1 year old watching YouTube Kids, so they're learning something. And a lot of he has this huge community of creators speaking, influencing, especially the young people. But when we talk about misinformation, we are fighting misinformation across elderly people because, over they are the targets for spreading misinformation because lacking of facting checks, all those stuff. And we are trying to work on how communication can actually serve the purpose of fight climate change and not support companies and markets that has been using for years communication to blindside people about climate issues and make them sometimes feel guilty about their own behaviors. It's not about my piece of my plate of my meat. It's not about my 40-minute shower. It's not about my one time a year international travel with my family and loved ones. But it's about something more systemic, right? And we've been using for the past 30 years, 40, maybe more, communication to make people feel guilty and just thinking about the individual and not the system. So yeah, my work has been shaped on those stuffs.
It's an amazing journey. And one of the pieces of it, which is impressive to me, is just learning English within 5 years. I wish I could learn, Portuguese within 5 years. But, so kudos to you for kind of just jumping in there and making a difference. And so tell us a little bit about the Creators Academy and the work that you're doing there.
Awesome. So the Creators Academy has three main principles. We say that it's necessary feel, reflect, and then act. Most of the content that we say online, it's all about the action, sharing, making other people share without reflect about it and without feeling what that thing means to them. I've been searching a lot how behavior changes relate to social media use and content consumption, right? And what I realized in some of my research was people that relate to some content actually change behavior. And a small part of them, or now it's like a big part of them, actually buy the lifestyles that the content creators sell in their platforms. So we have like influencers in Brazil that has like 45% conversion rate for products. That's more than like some of the biggest TV campaigns that we see, right? So it's like it's profitable. In Brazil, it's a 5 billion industry a year at least, like to say the less, because we lack a lot of data on this industry in Brazil. So content creation is something big and is growing very fast. Brazil is a country where social media platforms used to test like interactions and new features because Brazilians are heavy users. So like we used to say that we are chronically online. So Brazilians spend, I think, average 5 hours a day on social media. So it's a lot. And because of that, when I went to COP, what I was doing was I was creating content about COP. And I received a lot of like messages saying, what is this? Because like I never heard about how can I engage? And then I come back home and I say, I've been doing trips to the Amazon and other Brazilian biomes at that point for a while. And it was like, well, actually travel to the Amazon had changed my perspective about climate issues. If I invite people that has the influence to change other people's behavior to experience like the bare minimum that the forest can offer, and that person changes, maybe I don't have millions of followers to talk to, but I can reach people who speak with millions of people. And then I just put together a proposal to welcome our first group of 50 content creators in a boat trip to the Amazon. And our first trip was like amazing. We got like more than 10 million people engaged with the content that we produced. Our network now is like 120 content creators and journalists. So Creators Academy is a tool to amplify local community voices using content creators platforms. And we do that by them experiencing the biomes. So they go to the Amazon. Now we are planning travel to the Cerrado, which is kind of our savanna, and actually the source of most of the water that we have. The water sources most consume in Brazil came from the Cerrado. So like we are bringing those voices to these places so they can support, raise awareness about it. And we believe that the Creators Academy goes to a place that it's not about showing the problem and what it's lost. It's showing the state of art. It's showing how beautiful, like how much prosperity they have, how those people live and have well, like how their lives are good, and why their way of living should be preserved. Because most of the creation, the content that we see online, it's all about trauma, right? I was to say that our mission is shifting from trauma-based approach communication to emotional-based approach communication. But when I talk about emotion, I'm saying positive emotion. I want to show you not an animal burning in the wildfire, but actually a reserve that has been taken care of for local communities and a true partnership between companies, governments, and local communities. Because, we just use media to make people more concerned and scared. And when we are scared, we are totally wired to be, how can I say, isolated, to be like more, we just go to a place, we are more like, we became more kind of selfish. When we are scared, it's all about like, how can I preserve myself? It's all about self-preservation, right? So if we change the wire from fear to love or hope, we can make people more compassionate, we can support them and supporting others. So we really want to use Creators Academy as a way to train people to teach their audiences that they can be more compassionate and they can be better humans, that they don't need to be scared. Of course, the scenario is not good, but it's still hope. I say to my team every day that like science is saying to us that we still have time. So if we still have time, we're gonna work with hope and not despair and trauma. This is the floor that we are touching right now.
I think that's brilliant, and kudos to you for the great work that you're doing. I mean, it's brilliant kind of bringing these content creators into the Amazon and other places to have them get the experience and then share with their audiences that experience, which is educational and empowering and a chance for everybody to learn as well as inspire action to preserve this amazing environment that we all share. And I agree with you and a number of kind of professional communicating experts that I've had on the show. They've also said, hey, you got to have 2/3 hope to maybe 1/3 fear. You got to have more hope that we can turn this around than fear. Because if we're all in fear, we're kind of paralyzed, or as you said, get selfish and or just like, hey, what's the point? We're going to die. We might as well not do anything. But as you said, we can turn this around, and with concerted action, we will. So tell us more about the other organizations that you're working with and how they are affecting change.
Awesome. So I had found the OEI Institute a few years ago to work with other organizations and also companies to train their leaders, to engage them with the climate issues and understanding, how can I say that? So for me, it's like, it's more about working with people than the organizations. I've been working on climate for a while, and everyone's like is pointing fingers to brands, right? Which is important. We need to name the responsible organizations that are responsible for the climate issues. But most of those brands has people behind them. So our strategy in the AI Institute and the other organizations that I've been part of, it's like, how can we work with the leaders and shape their minds to build a better future in the companies that they are influencing? So with the AI Institute, we work on events, campaigns. Now we are planning now like communication products like podcasts or other ways to relate to those people. We also do like the trips, like Creators Academy, but we do like companies, like offsite events for companies where we invite those corporate leaders to walk barefoot again. I've been inviting a group of managers and a retail company here in Brazil, and I invite them to close their eyes, walk barefoot a little bit. One of them turned to me and said, I don't remember when I have walked barefoot like in the previous 10 years. We are so like disconnected from nature. And this is really, really part of most of the corporate lives. People they just wake and go straight to shower and then to work. And then it's like they are kind of confined in this vicious cycle. And I really believe that, like, as soon as we support people to remember that they are part of nature and the human beings are actually crucial for biodiversity, we can turn their behavior in something that is better. They will do better choices. They will develop new processes or review the process they are working with. So we've been doing that. We are really, really focused on support organizations developing their people and making them close to nature. I like to say that our mission is bringing organizations and people close to nature. And if we do that, like by talking to them, it's like it's one conversation at a time, right? Like, I don't believe that I can change the world or like just by myself. But if I can support one person, will be an entire planet in one person, because that person might be able to change so much more. So it's kind of this type of work. I've been serving some boards, a organization that works more on climate policies for the Brazilian legislation. So they are very focused on Brazilian climate policy, because I want to be close to that. I really want to support my nation to be the bio state that we can be. We are not doing that right now. Actually, we are actually like we are more allied to to the other side, but we can be better. So like, I want to be close to that change.
It's great that you're getting people out into nature. And one thing I was kind of struck by when I was in Brazil was how few people that I spoke to who are native Brazilians had actually been to the Amazon. They were like, "Oh, I've never been to the Amazon." No. So it's maybe kind of striking to them to go there and experience nature. And certainly I've talked to other environmentalists and leaders feeling, hey, it is so important for us to go out and personally experience nature. And it brings us back to our humanity and why this is important. And it is inspirational. So, again, kudos to you for bringing business leaders out there to experience this. I wanted to kind of ask you about, can you elaborate how climate justice plays a central role in your work with, various organizations, particularly in relationship to marginalized communities?
Course. So climate justice is a lens for me. Like, it goes to being like having fairness as a principle, but above all, it's about like our work is supporting people that are marginalized to thrive, not just survive to the climate crisis. So, for example, when we plan group trip to the Amazon, we work to develop the whole supply chain locally to, hire more women, hire more queer people, try to understand how those communities are organized, paying them fairly. One thing that it's like crucial in this sometimes is just talking about like being fair on paying people. But climate justice goes to understand those people. When I arrive, is everything good? When I left the place, will be good, will be worse. So for us, like, climate justice is a lens. We cannot do something that will left people in the worst condition after we left a place or we interact with them. We don't want to kind of perpetuate the extractivism that creates all the inequalities that we see nowadays. And climate justice goes to understand it's necessary create strategies for adaptation here, what this community really needs. Because when we bring, for example, a group of creators, they can bring a lot of visibility to a place. But if we don't prepare the community to work with the visitants that can be there afterwards, or we are not offering a way to work and continue to do the work, they will be in the worst condition. One project that we've been working in partnership with a Swiss-based organization called Game Forest is inclusion of IPLCs, which stands for Indigenous People and Local Communities, in the digital economy. And how we can do that. They are collectors already, right? But now they are collectors of raw materials like bioproducts, we'd say. But they can be data collectors. The difference between you being a collector of acai and being a data collector is that you don't have a ascension perspective being an acai collector. But the curve to you goes from data collector to data analyst to data scientist, and how you can be paid in the digital economy. It's a big difference. We were piloting this last year. And for data collectors, we were paying something around $400, which it's a little money if you're a US citizen, but multiply for six if you're a Brazilian, five and a half or six. So it's a lot of money for a riverside little boy that don't have access to like internet technology or like all the goodies that has in big cities, right? And then in the community, they can have this salary, which is a lot. But if they become in 6 months a data analyst or in 1 year, this can jump for $400 to $4,000, which is like more than any person in their family has made in like the entire life per month. And we were piloting for 6 months and we said like, it has hope. It's possible to do that. It's not in the interest of a lot of people because as soon as the communities know what they have, because when you become a data collector, you will start to understand the value of your territory, right? You understand the value of biodiversity. No one can tell you that your carbon credit like will be sold for less than what you know that really is value. That's why a lot of organizations don't do a real work with communities because if they know what they are actually selling, they probably won't sell. So it's like, so our work's like, we want to support you to understand what you have and use technology to protect biodiversity without you need to live in your home. We just notice how girls stay longer in isolated communities. And this is totally connected to care economy. They stay because they are responsible for the little ones, and they stay longer because they are responsible for the elders. And the boys, they just left the communities because they need to find a way to provide. And there's no money in the community now because they don't have like the cycles as they had before. I was like a small parenthesis here. I was living in Nebraska last year for 2 months and I was visiting a lot of corn farms, right? And talking to the farmers, they were saying to me like, I've been seeing early seasons every year, each after year, the seasons are changing. So if in Nebraska where they have access to technology, a a massive access to water, they are feeling the difficulty. Like now Nebraska is a fire state. Like every year thousands of acres has born because responsibility, like people just don't know. And the wind patterns change and it has like increasing the wildfires there. It happened the same here in Brazil year after year. So people in the communities don't have the access that the cities has. So we try to balance and offer when we are with them, kind of bridge the gap. We are still starting, right? Like my organization has 2 years. So we had a lot of plans, big ideas, and a small time to try to put everything in practice.
You've made a lot of progress, and I love the stories of hope that you're bringing opportunities, economic opportunities to people in indigenous areas and giving them a chance to kind of move up the ladder economically, and that kind of sings to my heart as an employment attorney. I'm fighting for the rights of people who've been not paid properly or treated poorly. And so I know that those are civil rights, and those are, going back to the Bible, talking about people denied their wages, and paying wages timely is so important, just taking care of yourself. But I wanted to kind of pivot back to the work that you were doing in the Brazilian government, or with the legislature, with laws there. And what are you seeing kind of on the ground, and in terms of enacting legislation that will help really shift the debate, or shift the community and the state and the nation in ways that will help protect the amazing environment in Brazil?
So I think our biggest achievement will be putting in place our climate plan, which is like a national plan, a national policy that will be kind of, how can I say that in English? Oh my God. But it's like each state needs to kind of, after the federal legislation, they implement locally. So we are now, for the first time, having something that will drive this Brazil plan of being a bio state. Naturally, we rely a lot on our natural resources, and we've been selling that to the global community. But we also rely a lot on our oil reserves or fossil fuel reserves. So the thing that is the biggest challenge for us right now is the Brazilian government understand that it's not possible being the two things at the same time, that we need to choose a path. So we were kind of like, it's not possible have it all, right? So our government understands now that they can have it all. And the climate movement is fighting on the policy and like advocacy part on saying to the government, no, it's not possible. But we have a chance to stop deforestation. So first way like movement from our government now was like they are really engaged on stop deforestation. The numbers are dropping in the Amazon. There is skyrocket in the other biomes. I'm not gonna lie, but in the Amazon the numbers has dropped, which is awesome. But we need our governments to understand how natural ecosystems are intertwined. And it doesn't matter if you stop deforestation in the Amazon, but there's no cerrado to support the Amazon and care the water that is produced in the Amazon. Otherwise, the water will stay there. So it's kind of now we are fighting a fight that to make policymakers understand the science behind ecological ecosystems, like natural ecosystems, because they are working more on the economic aspects. So I think this is kind of hard part for everybody, right? When we're talking about policymaking on climate, it's aligning science and economics. We've been advancing in some states, for example, the state of like Espírito Santo. They've been a lot like they were facing a few years ago. We had like a huge accident with a mining company, and a whole river had died because of the accident. And the state of Espírito Santo, they've been working very hard to treat the river and support the families. And they've been an example for other states to develop like policies regarding like the precautions with mining companies. So like mining projects and pipelines. So kind of these kind of policies are advancing right now. We still face a challenge of like understand that we need to phase out from fossil fuel. Brazil is I think I think we are in fourth place as like the largest emitter of like greenhouse gas emissions. I think Brazil is the fourth or fifth one right now. And we should pay our part in this, right? Like,
Yeah, I didn't see a whole lot of solar or wind or electric cars while I was in Brazil. And Of course, I would think that, you have tremendous solar potential in Brazil because it's such a sunny place, and I would assume wind as well. Why is it that I'm not seeing that, and are there plans to change that?
Yeah, I would say that for two main reasons. First, our energy were developed mostly on hydraulic power. And then our matrix, like in the last 20 years, has increased in wind and solar, but it's still for like, I think it's less than 15% of our matrix goes for wind and solar. It's mostly hydraulic energy. So, like, we've been building these structures all over the country for the hydroelectric ones. So, which has a negative impact. It is considered a clean source, but the side effects of a hydroelectric being put in place, it's a lot. We don't have, to be honest with you, just like my perspective and some that I've been reading about regarding we're not adopting a lot of EVs right now goes because we don't have infrastructure to have like long distance travels by car. So that's a lot of like infrastructures for the EVs because our country is continental, right? And most of the logistics are doing by trucks, for example. How can we like bring more electrical trucks and we don't have infrastructure for them to do the long distance trips? One thing that I believe that for Brazil, it's a little bit different than other countries is that we can combine different sources. We can have ethanol, for example, and like hybrid cars, it's more something for Brazil than full EV vehicles right now. It's just like one perspective for us. I've been like listening some companies that are saying like we're not gonna bring full electrical vehicles to Brazil. For us, it would be like we're gonna work on the hybrids. But there's like Chinese companies coming all in to the Brazil market for EVs. Right now, I believe that in 5 years from now, you're probably gonna come back to Brazil and see more. Yeah, I think it's more like on the long distance is because of that. Like we travel a lot and we don't have still like infrastructure for the EVs.
Say that, yeah, Brazil is such a ginormous country. I would look at it like, oh, I could go here, and I'd look on the map. It's only an inch and a half, and you're like, oh, it's 1,500 miles.
Yeah.
It's huge, but I was also struck by the lack of commuter trains. Like trying to, hey, could I take a train from here to there? And it was like, no, there's not a train that goes. So, is there any plan to connect the cities?
This is our biggest fight on logistics. So back in the 70s, I think, maybe a little bit earlier than that, was like a massive movement in Brazil to having trails. And then it was stopped by the lobbying of car companies and has been there so far since then has been like everything is about highways and trails. I don't see right now, and I had this conversation last week. I don't see right now any political willing to pay the price to fight those companies and try to invest in trails for Brazil would be a massive victory for logistics and way less impact on nature. But I think the bottom line here is that the investment upfront for trails is larger than the highways, but the highways is like it's kind of like cheaper to do at the beginning, and then you spend a lot of money on maintenance, right? To make sure that that it's good, it's safe still. So it's kind of they use this kind of argument to delay things like that, and it has been working for 50 years so far.
Right. Well, certainly, I could see the challenges of having a rail system in Brazil because it is so large. But there are rail systems in other large countries, and they seem to kind of operate. So hopefully, that will take hold at some point in time. So, how can grassroots community-led initiative play a crucial role in advancing climate justice, especially in vulnerable regions like Brazilian biomes?
I see in like three main ways. The first one is community awareness. The grassroots movements, they can support local education and they can support literally people survive to the climate crisis, just raising awareness. The second aspect is grassroots initiatives. They bring what is happening on the ground to public policy. And if we as like if governments are wired to actually listen those movements, the policies can be more precise and more like effective. So I think there's this component of co-design of policies, projects, everything. And the third aspect for me is actually like engagement and building movement for the long run. Grassroots movements, they are all about collective action. It's about collective responsibility. So when we empower communities to work together to co-design solutions, they can actually work for the solutions last longer. Like that's tons of studies saying that there's no policy or projects like that is implemented without community participation that lasts. So grassroots movements, they can support climate projects to go longer and stay for more time in place and actually has impact, you know. And I really believe that when we support grassroots movements, we make sure that the voices of those that are more impacted without being the cause of the problem will be heard and will be supported to not just survive but thrive during this crisis.
There's a persuasive argument for grassroots organization and grassroots show.
I would say that like a lot of the vision that is, I don't know, I think we choose to picture grassroots movements as disorganized, just the screamers. You know, it's all about the protests. But what I've been seeing is that they actually do the protest, but they are more community organizers than protesters. You know, sometimes we picture the protester as the only builder of a grassroots movement, and it's not that way. Things are combined. We need people on streets screaming. Definitely, we need because those voices are also important to make sure that more people are listening. But the larger group of doers, they are moderate people working silently, right? So that's why I took the river lesson. So movement in river, it starts way, way below. Like at 6 o'clock, you look to the river and it's a mirror. There's no movement and the surface. But below, there's a lot of things happening, right? If you stay there and you observe the changes, in 2 hours from that, you're going to see waves all over the river. So it's like, I do believe that grassroots movements are empowered that way. Most of the time, we are looking to the surface and maybe listening some groups screaming. And we are not paying attention to that because as humans, we are not wired to respond to screaming. Actually, when we hear screaming, our inner child just turn off the noise, you know, and think about other stuff. But there's a lot of working happening below the surface. And I think we should, as any organization or corporate leader, or like if you know that you have influence in any aspect of your life, look below the surface to understand the grassroots movements and how they are actually working because you know the campaigns are just a small part of a large work that has been done before.
Well said. Tell our listeners how they can stay in touch with you and check out your social media and follow you and contribute to what you're doing.
Yeah, you can find me on all social media as Camila with K, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you. I've been doing content and bilingual, so if you're an English speaker, you're gonna understand what I'm saying. There are subtitles in English. And yeah, let's stay connected. I think we can fight climate change together. This is a collective issue that requires collective action. Thank you so much, Matt, for having me.
Thank you, Camilla, and great work and good luck to you going forward. We'll look forward to collaborating with you as we go forward. To learn more about our work at A Climate Change and how you can help us reach our goal planting 30,000 trees in the Amazon this year, visit aclimatechange.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. See you next time.